Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to the Friel Thing podcast with me, Greg Friel. Okay, folks, I have a very, very special guest this week. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Ruby Sweeney? I'll add in some applause later on. Welcome, Ruby. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Greg.
Good.
How are you?
Second time round. I was good the first time round as well. Even if I screw up the intro, it's fine. Anyway, so for the folks at home, a quick 30 seconds on who you are and what it is that you do.
Thanks, Greg. So I am a business owner. I own the Events Hub, founded in 2011, and I'm an events manager and consultant. And I work with clients, typically SMEs, public sector consultants, small businesses, small teams who don't have the capacity or the expertise to run professional conferences and events. So that's when they draft us in, and we help to professionalize those events, conferences, meetings, etc.
Now, the events industry has had an interesting time over the past year. What happened to you guys, like straight away, March? What? Just give me a little bit of a sense of what happened there.
Yeah. So I came back from London. I was in London for about 4 days. I ran a 2-day conference. I was absolutely shattered because with events and conferences, the cycle is that you have months of planning. So as a virtual business, we've always been a virtual remote business. We have months of planning at home, in front of the screen, Zoom meetings, team meetings. That was all very much the norm for us
Right.
before the pandemic, because our team is based around the UK. So we'd always meet on these calls and strategize and plan and move forward and just catch up on where we were in the timeline of a particular event. So as a virtual team, we got together, we'd been at this event in London together. We were all exhausted from months of planning beforehand, being on site and then traveling home afterwards. So I got back, and a week later, the venue shut. So we were the last big event in that venue, and probably still will have been. And that was my last face-to-face event. And it was a global conference. People had come in from different parts of the world, this event, which has got a fantastic reputation in its sector. So came home, a week later, everything's shut down. Projects are starting to cancel, or more importantly, get put on hold. It was a case of contacting venues and suppliers and speaking to the clients and deciding kind of when we'd push certain projects to, and then other projects that might have just started were put on hold completely because we just didn't know what the outlook was. So it was all chaotic. Things were just dropping at the wayside. The start of that month, the start of March 2020, I had just signed up working with a new client. 2.5 weeks in, I get the call, Ruby, sorry, but can we just kind of pause the work right now because we just don't know what the lay of the land is. So it was all just chaos, dropping, postponing, not knowing what's coming next, not knowing what the next step was. And in a really kind of twisted way, I'm not saying I was thankful for it, but I was shattered because events and conferences take so much out of you. And this big project, this annual event that we just finished running, this conference, had taken everything out of me, and I was absolutely exhausted. And it just gave me a chance to stop. And my kids were at home. The weather in Scotland, amazingly, was really good. So we spent those first couple of weeks of lockdown just in our garden.
I was just going to say, did you actually
And
take the time? You just enjoyed the time rather than went into panic mode?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the last thing I wanted to do was panic because I recognize that pattern of coming back from that particular conference or any big event that you kind of build up to just take that time out to just stop and clear the diary and just relax, because the way I work and the way my team work is that we put so much energy into every event that you don't actually recognize how draining that is on you physically, mentally, emotionally. So the opportunity to just stop and spend time with my children was rare, because normally it's just school, nursery, the same old stuff, even if my work diary's lighter. And so we all stopped, we were all spending time together, we were all bonding, and it was really enlightening, I think, in that sense, that it just gave me a chance to stop and think about what was most important in that moment when all this chaos was going on in the world. And at the time I was kind of now and again checking in on the news, but I was starting to feel a bit like I don't even want to do that. So I distanced myself from all the scaremongering that was going on, and social media and all that sort of stuff, because I thought we can't control it. Why get so
Absolutely.
involved in it? So it was all, yeah, it was all just a bit mental, and it was just trying to distance myself from
Mm-hmm.
all that chaos and uncertainty, because I have two very young children, and I'd come back
Mm-hmm.
completely wiped, and I just want to feel worse
Mm-hmm.
than I was than I was feeling, and just wanted to throw myself into family life for a bit to
Sure.
just take my mind off things.
I think the interesting thing that you're saying here is the fact that you were used to using Zoom and having online meetings and all that kind of side of things. Now, that's all very well that you were
Yeah.
used to that, but your clients and the
Mm.
concept of being able to hold a virtual conference, virtual events, that's still very much kind of a new idea, really. What happened there? What was the process like in terms of getting people back on board with the idea of actually, let's do something, and we can make this work, but in an online sense.
Mm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Greg, because for me, when I started to look at those first few weeks of lockdown and being with the kids, I realized and recognized that I needed some sort of routine again. Even though I was thankful for it and I threw myself into it, it got a few weeks in and I thought I need some sort of routine. But more importantly, I need that social interaction, which at the time was only going to be through
Mm-hmm.
a Zoom screen or a Teams or another platform screen. So I started going on to online networking, which I can come back to and we can talk about later. But with clients, what was really interesting was that you can almost kind of split them into different groups. So there were those that said, right, we'll be realistic, we'll park that event for now. And we'll just kind of just see what happens in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, and just take it from there. And there were those clients that kind of just buried their heads in the sand and might have just been a little bit,
In a couple of
this will
weeks,
blow
that could,
over
yeah.
and we'll just deal with it. Yeah, 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 exactly, which is completely understandable because none
Mm-hmm.
of us had been in this situation before. And then there was kind of another group of clients, but then also new clients that came into that group that knew they had something to deliver and were willing to give things a shot, regardless of how rough
Yeah,
around the edges it was.
keep things
They
going.
just wanted to deliver something. Yeah, absolutely. And then there was almost kind of a fourth group, I think, which were that they had something to deliver, and they would sort of have this vision, um, but they were kind of on the fence. So we were sort of going, you know what, if you did this, you would still be visible,
Mm-hmm.
without being
Mm-hmm.
pushy about it. Because I think again, understanding where people were this time last year was being empathetic to the situation that everybody's going through this individually. There's this huge global, awful pandemic that nobody knew anything about. Nobody understood how far-reaching it was going to be or how
Yeah.
long-lasting it was going to be, and that everyone was just having very different experiences, and we were all in different places mentally and the rest of it. So it was almost kind of this group of people that were kind of willing to do something, but they weren't quite sure what. So we kind of focused on those that wanted to stay active or that were thinking about staying active, and we knew that they had that vision, and not necessarily kind of mavericks. I think for me, quite a few of my maverick clients have done stuff over the last, since 2021 kicked in. They've done some really interesting stuff because I think the
Yeah.
confidence was there. But last year it was just, right, let's just try this. And I think I kind of want to take my hat off to those that just went, we'll try this. We'll put that event into this and, acknowledge that it needs to be shorter
Mm-hmm.
sessions, or it needs to be more dynamic, or we need longer breaks, or whatever it was to change that agenda up for the virtual experience. But it was all about kind of understanding and empathizing with the user or the visitor or the delegate, whatever, however you refer to them, that was on the other side of that screen. And again, as you probably know, there were some groups that were internal, so you can
Yeah.
have staff conferences or advisory board meetings or AGMs or membership meetings, that kind of thing. And then there's that group where you've got external visitors, whether they're free or paying or otherwise. So there are lots of different stakeholders to consider. And my thing was never about me. This time last year, it was never about me. It was about, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to quit, but that I parked that, and I thought, how can I, to ensure that I'm not quitting my business or my sector or my industry or what I know, what can I do to ensure that my clients are still active, my clients are still visible, their events can still happen in some shape or form. So it was about them, but not forgetting, and more importantly, the other person, the consumer of, you know, their event or their experience, was what would they be comfortable with? What
Yeah.
would they be happy with? What would their expectations be? So it was a lot of kind of thinking and almost kind of a coaching and just kind
Easing
of
people into that
being
idea of it.
empathetic towards
Yeah, I
where
mean,
he was going through. Yeah,
I found
yeah,
that you know,
absolutely.
an awful lot of the attitude at the time was there was resistance to anybody who was seen to be doing anything salesy. Obviously, you know, it was kind of like you're exploiting the pandemic, that sort of things.
Absolutely.
So then it goes back
Yeah.
to, you know, the old adage, you know, and the thing that I just kept repeating to clients at the time, you know, if you're not selling, you're branding, you know, so you just, there needs to be that visibility so that you're there.
Yeah.
And whether that's just being a reassuring presence in, for example, in the travel industry, just somebody who's giving people information and that kind of thing, so that months from now, whenever we get back to that world, you know, they're going to look at you, they're going to see you because you're that trusted voice that was there for them, you know, during this time. And I think, just like you're saying with the events industry, you know, there has to be those, you know, businesses that are like still visible. You're still out there. You're still being seen. And although, you know, obviously the events industry has been massively hit by this, you know, you can still be visible in that scene and within your world, and let people know that you're active and you're there.
100%. And a big part, Greg, of what we did last year was not trading. So we were, you know, cash flow was horrendous for us last year. There was very, very little coming in. But what last year gave us the opportunity to do was to lay that groundwork. It was to, as you say, that branding, that visibility. I've never spent so much of my time on LinkedIn or in networking meetings, because again, being able to do virtual networking meant that you could go into one and then come out of that and go
Have
to
you
another,
found the virtual
and you can be
networking
another
thing? I
part
mean,
of
are
the
you
world.
somebody? I mean, obviously, you know, you love events and the, you know, the real world side of things, but I have to say that I'm kind of really, I kind of prefer the virtual thing just because of being able to nip from one thing to the next and jump, you know, from one country to the next and all that kind of thing, and I don't have to leave,
Yeah.
you know, my house, and I don't have to get in the car and park and all of that.
Yeah, big time. I'm a big fan of virtual networking. And I'm with you, I get more from virtual networking than I get
Yeah.
from networking in the room. And I think what I like about it is, again, the kind of the removal of that physicality piece and the travel bit. And I think particularly for those of us who, whether we have young children or elderly parents, we care for someone, or, you know, we have family responsibilities that restrict our time. For me, those boundaries have gone. So I mean, I do this a lot. So once or twice a week, one of the groups I'm a member of, they have an event at 8 in the morning. So I'll put my earphones in and I'll listen whilst I get my daughters ready for school and nursery. And then I'll listen in the car, and then I'll get back into the house after I've dropped them off. And I finish off on Zoom, you know, on the screen. And it's
Yeah.
fantastic. I can be
You
part of
don't
something
feel
that
excluded.
otherwise I just forget it. Absolutely, yeah. And I think a big part of the virtual networking and virtual events is that inclusion bit for people who haven't had accessibility to events before. Suddenly, is this opening up of a particular event, or a particular group or a particular membership, and takes a huge amount of pressure
Yeah.
off. Particularly, you know, for me, kids, huge amount of pressure off, and the amount of stuff I can consume now. And you have on-demand content or a recording of an event, or you have you know, you have key takeaways, and you might have a 1 or 2 page PDF from a virtual event that you can then take and save and read and just all these things that you can do with a virtual event or virtual networking, which we weren't able to do before. And from an organizer perspective, or even as a sponsor or a virtual exhibitor, when you're in a virtual platform, you have analytics, you have the data of people who've engaged with you, or the numbers of people that have come through, or which sessions were the most popular, and you don't necessarily have those
But you know what's
metrics in a
really
live
good, probably more than
event.
anything
And
else, Ruby, is
one
that
final,
you don't get stuck in a room with somebody that you hate for very long.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
You can literally, it's not like,
Yeah,
oh my God, I'm
I was
stuck
going to
here
say
standing with this
that.
person and I can't leave. Whereas, you know that if you're in a breakout room, it's going to be 10
Yeah,
minutes, right?
yeah,
Fine, and I'm done. So there's that. And you don't have that
yeah,
situation
yeah,
where you're in
absolutely.
a room and you can see somebody that you really want to talk to and you never get that opportunity to do that. Whenever it's the virtual thing, you're like, oh, I'll drop them a message just
Yeah,
now and they'll see that and we'll arrange a one-to-one. And so for me, I'm like, that's where it's
absolutely.
really, really helpful. And it just,
Yeah, yeah. That's where it's really, yeah. Sorry, Greg. I was just gonna say that's where it's really taken off for me, and I was gonna come to that. The structure and the format of a virtual event is great because let's not pretend that physical events, live events, were the be all and the end all of events. We've all been to live
oh
events
God,
that were
yeah.
terrible. We've all been to live
I'm
events that were
normally the one who
horrible.
would be like
We've all, like you say, we've
saying embarrassing things and I should shut up. Heckling.
oh, I've not expected
I'm
that. Come
like,
on, Greg.
rubbish.
But
That's
you're the
me.
heckler. You're the heckler. But I think there's kind of a couple of things. There's this whole kind of it's not live versus virtual. It's you kind of have to think about how these events can come together in the future and benefit everybody. But it's also about live physical events. There've been some great ones. There've been some forgettable ones. There've been some terrible ones. But also, you've got to remember that with the structure of a virtual event, you can move
Hmm.
around a room. You can see someone who you think 100% want to connect with that person and have a chat with them. So
Okay.
let me give you a quick example. So last week I was on a virtual event. Was it last week? Maybe even yesterday. No, last week.
Time
It
has
was
no
last week.
meaning anymore.
I'm on quite a lot of events. Not anymore. Not in the virtual world. I was on an event end of last week, and it was a sustainability event delivered by Glasgow Chamber, and I was active in the chat box because when I show up to something, I want to show up as me. I don't want to just sit there and be a wallflower at the same time. I don't want to be posting in the chat box every 2 minutes. So I just want to be
Hmm.
authentic to who I am. And the way I show up to a virtual event is how you would expect to see me at a live event is, I'm engaged, I'm positive, I'm smiling, and all of these things do feed into your personal brand. So when you go onto a virtual event and you're sat in a networking event like this with your face, I'm not even going to do it because I smile a lot, but you're not smiling, you're looking fed up, your body language is saying you don't want to be there. My question
Hmm.
is, why are you there? And so when I show up to something virtually or in the room, I am authentically showing up as me. So anyway, I was in the chat box and posting some discussions and things, and then someone spotted me, and eventually it just kind of led to a meeting this morning about a potential collaboration. So it
Visibility
just
is
goes to show
everything.
how we everything. It's everything. And what triggered that was something else that I posted on their Instagram page, and I'd had a conversation with the person that manages their Instagram, saying, I love what you're doing, and here are my contributions, and da da da. And suddenly you're kind of tying all those threads together, and you're building that
Absolutely.
visibility. So for me, virtual has done tremendous things for me and for my brand that face to
Same
face
here. I
had
mean,
never done.
and to your point there, just, saying something here, saying something over there. It's all of these different
Mhm.
diverse strands interweaving, and it's like this. We've got to connect the dots here, 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 and that's what I do. My whole thing is connecting the dots between
Yeah.
a client and their potential audience, but even just somebody who needs to connect with some other business owner. It's just like that whole networking side of things. Of whenever I meet somebody, I'm always like, it's not necessarily what can I do for them. It's how can I help them, and is there somebody who I know
Mm,
who'd be useful for them. And it's something that I teach, and when I do
yeah.
like workshops about social media marketing, whatever, that that social media
Mhm.
mindset is just a sensible business practice in terms of adding value and being helpful, being treating it as a community. And that's what people get wrong about social media.
Mhm.
you know they just jump
Yeah.
on, or even in the same way like a networking meeting, they'll maybe drop their contact details, not really be active, not really add value to the
Yeah.
discussion or anything like that, or be helpful, but expect people to notice them and to give them work. And you're like, but the key thing that you said there was being authentically you. And I think
Mm.
obviously I massively resonate with that because I am authentically me. And but by being authentically me, it's completely transformed my business. I was kind of holding back before. I was not really being me. And I just went, you know what, forget it. I
Yeah.
just need to be 100% me all the time. Otherwise, I'm not happy. And it made all the difference business
Yeah.
wise. And I'm sure that's the case for you, is that when you show up, people know who you
100%.
are, what you're about, and they get a real sense of how you're going to work with them from a business perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it is about alignment, isn't it, Greg? It's about kind of aligning yourself with that kind of that energy. And I think that especially last year, and understandably so, so many of us were just, what the hell is going on? But I think that energy and I mean everything was just going, it was hitting the fan for my industry last year. And like I said, cash flow and everything were just horrific for us as a business last year. But I was still being positive. People going, why are you being positive? Your industry's falling apart. And I'm thinking, well, if I don't bring that positivity, then where is it going to come from? And I know I'm only a small business, but interestingly, I'm seeing a lot of small events businesses around the UK and beyond who are doing really great things, who are innovating, who are being creative. And I'm seeing that more from the smaller agile businesses
Yeah.
that I might even be seeing from the bigger players. So actually, as a small business owner, I feel I have a responsibility, particularly in a sector that's been so hard hit, to just keep being positive and just keep being myself. And it's not
No, it's
faking
just,
it. It's just
yeah.
bringing who I
But
am.
it's something you said earlier
Yeah,
on. It's,
yeah, to the
you can't change, what's happening, but it's how you react to it. And how you're choosing to
mm,
react to it is, going to make all the difference. And getting upset or,
yeah,
being addicted to the news cycle and all this kind of thing, and letting that dictate your behavior and your response is just the worst approach, especially as a business owner. You just like, no, no, no.
yeah,
You just need to be, to a certain extent, excuse me, in your own headspace and just think, no, this is what I'm focused on. And you can say that and be
100%.
fine, whatever, but that's your version of reality. But I'm looking at it like this.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely, absolutely.
let's go way back. How did you get first interested in doing events? Was this something that did you go to university? Did was it something you studied, or did you just sort of find out from working in hospitality, or what?
Yeah, so I did a degree in hospitality and tourism management. So the idea behind that when I went to university was to get involved in, the high flying, traveling around the world and, beautiful places in Europe and whatnot, working in hotels and
Hmm.
travel. That was the dream. And I went into that, not for the glamorous side of things, just to be able to travel and see the world and experience cultures and that kind of thing through work. And I went into that, and I was originally going to spend my year in industry, so my placement year during university in America. I'd got a placement in a resort in the US, in North Carolina, and 9/11 had just happened, and my parents were absolutely petrified about sending me away for a year
Hmm.
on my own. So I kind of thought, well, what's the next best thing that I could do that's closer to home? And at the time, there was no such thing as an event management degree. There were many amazing degrees out there now, offered by lots of universities around the UK, but there wasn't. And so I thought, right, let me go and do the next best thing, and that is going to London. I wasn't based in London. I was studying in Birmingham, and again, London didn't have a great hospitality degree, which is why I went to Birmingham. So I thought, right, I'm not studying in London. I'm studying in Birmingham. This is my opportunity to go and
Hmm.
do the London thing. So I went to London. I spent a year at an airport hotel, so at Heathrow, which in itself is, it's like a village, it's
Absolutely,
like a
yeah.
town, Heathrow itself. Uh, and just that kind of that transient life, people are jetting in and out, and cabin crews are coming into the hotels, and there's groups, and there's,
Are you
there's
somebody
all
that
this amazing
loves
stuff, and people are
airports?
traveling in and out.
Yeah. See, my wife is the
Yes.
same. My wife is obsessed with travel. And it's funny. I was talking
Oh, I
to
love it.
my mum the other day about, Linda, my wife, and I had gone away just to Edinburgh for our anniversary. And Mum was like, "Well, you probably had a really relaxing time because you weren't in airports and traveling and all that kind of thing." I'm like, "No, Mum, we love going on it, planes and airports. That's the fun bit."
Yeah, that's the fun of it. Yeah, I do get a real
Yeah.
buzz being in airports,
And
being
I
near an
pose in
airport. And
airports. Are you kidding
I
me?
got
I
to a
mean,
point
I
where
should have on a pair of shades and a leather jacket. I'm like, you think you know me, but you don't. Yeah, it
I'm going to try
works
that.
all the time. You just get looks from
And
people and they're like,
yeah,
is that? No,
they must get really
absolutely.
confused. But yeah, I'm the same. I love an airport. I've loved airports since I was a kid, and I just being near an airport, and I got to a point, Greg, where I couldn't sleep at night unless I could hear jets flying over my head every, was it 60 to 90 seconds at
Yeah,
Heathrow? Yeah, when I moved away, it was like,
it's really
where
quiet.
where are the planes gone? And so yeah, yeah, absolutely. But again, a diverse, really diverse place, loads of different people working at the hotel, and then of course you have the guests and you have the conference business, and just superb. And so I wasn't working in the events department at the time, but we had this open plan office. Sales accounts. I was in reservations. You'd have people from reception, zipping in and out, requesting information or wanting, info on a group that might be coming in, and, back and forth for paperwork and all that stuff. So you'd kind of get a flavour of what was happening on the reception desk. And then there was this corner of the office that was empty. And I'd been there like 2 or 3, maybe 4 months. And I hadn't even realised that back at the hotel, this big section of the hotel had been screened off. And it was the conference centre,
Right.
which is being refurbished. And it hadn't really been mentioned and things. And I was kind of like, why is that part of the office empty? And they said, well, the conference centre is being refurbished. It'll be launching in a couple of weeks, I think it was, maybe 1 or 2 months or something. I said, can I go and join the events team? That sounds like fun. I had no idea what events was. I was 19 years old, and I'd had no visibility of conferencing or banquets, as they
Yeah.
called them back in the day, and events and things. So management were incredible and just went, yeah, go for it. And that turning point, that catalyst for my career, everything going into events, all happened in that moment. And I think it's such a great message that when someone's a new entrant into an industry or a sector or into business, to give them the opportunity to try things, and if they're showing curiosity or interest in something, just say, you know what, yeah, go for it. Dip your toe in the water and see if you like it. And that's kind of how the attitude from management was, which was fantastic. Because if they'd said, actually, no, we've got this plan for your placement, or you've said you want to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to stick to that, my career would have taken a completely different turn. So that opportunity to get into events and experience it around Christmas time, we were doing
Yeah.
Christmas parties, and we had launch events for the conference centre, and it's just like, wow, it was an absolute experience for the senses. So I went back to university, finished my degree, and knew events would be the thing. So I ended up, after that, going to central London, working for the Royal Society of Arts, which was a central London venue. So very different from where I had been before, having worked at an airport hotel by Heathrow. So London, central London, was that experience that I was craving. And it was that go-to, if you're in events, you have to spend at some point your career in London. And for
Yeah.
most people, it was the early part of their career. So I went there with this view to work in the city, to live in the city, and just experience life working in events in one of the best cities for events and conferences and parties in the world.
So what kind of
So
events were you doing there, though?
yeah, so I was getting involved with conferences, with drinks receptions, private dinners. We used to manage small private and intimate weddings as well in the venue. And I would also organise networking for venues that were in kind of a similar space as ours. So it's a small collective of similar sort of venues. And it was great because the experience that I got, not just from being involved in the events in-house for our venue, but it was also seeing what others around us were doing. And my role was also to look after the fellowship, so the membership of the Royal Society of Arts. So any of their event inquiries that came through, I was responsible for them, whether they were corporate, private, or weddings and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, which was a great experience.
Royal Society and all that connection with the royal family?
Yeah, so
Anything there events wise?
Prince Philip was the president of the RSA, and so we also did lectures for Prince Philip. We did high profile events and weddings, and we had some of the most beautiful rooms. So the venue just kind of sold itself, and it was
Yeah.
the most amazing product to be able to sell. And so that was fantastic. And that year's experience with the diverse, again, colleagues that I had, that I was working with, and just the nature of events that we got involved with was fantastic. And then there was also the opportunity to showcase our venue at bigger exhibitions. So
Right.
this whole kind of buzz around what we were doing was superb. And we were just in the middle of it all. And London had just been announced as the finalist for the 2012 Olympics at the time. So we
Right.
were
Okay.
there when it got announced. So imagine that, just being in the city, it's being announced, everybody's going crazy around you. It was amazing. And then as you do, as a student, having been in London for a year, I then sort of ran out of money and decided that my best move would be to move back with my parents and find
Good
work
move.
locally to them. But the challenge was
Sponge off
that,
your parents as much as you can.
yes, exactly. And you always have this idea that you're going to move in with your parents temporarily, and it becomes this much
5 years
longer
later.
thing. For me, it was 8 years, Greg. It was 8 years.
Good on you. Well done. Good. Nice.
I
You don't want to be
survived.
making those mortgage payments unnecessarily.
Absolutely. It was great. And what was challenging though was were two things, was that moving back to live with your parents, and where am I going to find a decent events job in quiet southwest England? And the second part of that was the whole kind of lifestyle, the contrast of coming out of London and going to a very quiet part of the country. So the challenge was then to find a job or a position that would help me to continue to forward my career. So I then found this fantastic role in a scientific publishing company, and it was worldwide exhibitions.
Okay.
So again, that was really exciting because I was going overseas, not as much as I would have liked, but I was planning events for overseas for a lot of my colleagues. And I also got exposed to other parts of events again and other parts of an organization. So they had
A
things
real
like,
cross section then.
yeah, absolutely, a real cross section. So they had things like journals and magazines. So that kind of publishing world, again, was new to me. So to understand what made people tick in that world, and what the exhibitions had to achieve, and what they had to be structured like, and who'd get involved, and what the process was, and learning about logistics and shipping, and just all this incredible stuff that, again, I hadn't been exposed to before. So that just kind of helped me to increase my knowledge and to build
Yeah.
on what I had already gained, but also loads of new experiences and ideas, and just understandings of different parts of the events industry. And then
So how long
after
did you
that,
do that for?
I did that for just under a year.
Right.
And then I had there was a bit of an issue at work, and I just thought, you know what, I'm not getting on with my manager. And so I left there, and I left that business, that organization, and then moved on to manage my own region. So in fact, that was again another step up into
Yeah.
a new role and more responsibility, which
And
was
you're
great.
you're just basically kind of tasting all these different aspects of the events industry, really, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess naively or otherwise, just finding that there are just all these, just unraveling all these different layers of what events touches. And again, part of that succession, moving on to that next role, meant that I had more space to grow, because in my exhibitions role, there was really nowhere for me to go. Not that I was
Right.
expecting that within those 10 months I was there, but it was just one of those things that, I fell out with my manager, and I just couldn't stay on. So I then went into a regional role, and that was fantastic because, again, another element of events, this was for a business support organization, and we were working with entrepreneurs. So this is where it gets interesting, Greg, because I got that flavor of entrepreneurship for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was
Completely
really,
different vibe.
yeah, so different. And again, I think it was because it opened up so many different aspects of people running businesses. And I remember kind of meeting people that would come to my events that I'd organized, and they'd say, I do X, Y, and Z. I think, could you run a business doing that? And then, speaking to the next person, people run businesses doing that, So again, just understanding the world of the world of business and what services or products people have to offer. And that started to kind of ignite this small kind of flame for entrepreneurship, I think. And what they
Which
would
eventually led to the start of
Yeah,
your business.
absolutely, yeah. So I was there for 3.5 years and I was ready to move on. And I had aspired to go to this agency that I'd known about for quite a few years. And they were within commutable distance of my parents' place where I was staying. And so I got the job, was over the moon, expecting really great things to happen, not just from, from their side, but that I could make an impact as well. And it was awful, Greg. I just couldn't stand. I just couldn't stand for it. It made me ill in 3 months. It was
Worst
demoralizing,
thing.
awful. Yeah, just awful. And
Nothing worse
some
than thinking, every morning you get up for work and you feel sick about the prospect of going to work.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And what was fundamental for me was I'd never felt like that.
Right,
And
okay.
all the roles that I'd had before, I had just an absolute love for what I did, for the people that I was serving, or for the team that I was in, or the people that came to my events, or the people I'd meet, So that sick feeling, that kind of, I'm not enjoying this. They messed up my training, and all this kind of stuff was just building and building. And I thought, I can't give anymore. And if I do, it's going to make me seriously, seriously ill. So I remember crying in the car park on the last day and vowing to myself that I would never go back. And the other thing that I did was I vowed to myself that if someone could make me feel like that working for them, I don't want to work for anyone ever again. So that was quite bold. And
Does it then
I
inform the way that you run your own business, in that you're kind of like, obviously you're a lovely person, so you're not going to want to make somebody feel that bad, but did you think, you know what, I don't ever want to make anybody who's working with me feel like that?
absolutely, yeah,
Because you
yeah,
see both
absolutely.
sides.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I see that. I see that. And it's interesting because when you start a business, you think everybody's on this journey with you, everybody's on the bus with you, and they're not necessarily. And I had, in fact, when I first started the business, first couple of years in, and I had some really great friends. And in fact, one of them was also working at the agency that I was at. She stayed on for a lot longer. And then just as she was wrapping up, said, you want to come and work with me because we work so well together. And I think for some people, it's also high risk going to work for a small business. And so they want that stability of an income or whatever it is that
Yeah.
a job or employment provides. And the volatility of working for somebody else can be quite, I think you're either entrepreneurial
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
or you're looking for that safety blanket. So again, that was great to understand that, because not everybody's going to share the same vision as me, as the owner of this business, as the founder and the person that's driving it forward.
I think there's so many people that you meet, in excuse me, in business networking in particular,
Mm.
who've maybe had a career in corporate for like 20, 25 years, and they go, yeah, I want to do my own thing, and then they
Mm.
start to do their own thing, and you meet them, you go, you're not going to be doing this in 6 months time, because they were used to their cushy corporate lifestyle with everything's taken care of, there's a department for that, there's a department for this, and everything's organized. Guess what, you're the department for that, you're the department for this.
You are,
And
and
it's a
yeah.
completely different mindset.
It is. It really is, and it's the setup. It's so much. It's just that resilience, and I think particularly what we've all been through in the last sort of 15 months is just that resilience and that desire to keep going, to keep serving, to being true to who you are and what you and your business stand for. So all these things have been great, and I think for me, going through the pandemic situation and having to make changes to the business has meant that I've future-proofed that business. I think I've had one of the biggest learning curves of anyone that I know in my circle. And for me, that resilience is paying off, and it will
Yeah.
continue to pay off because that business is now completely future-proofed. And whether a client wants a virtual event, a hybrid event, a face-to-face event, whether they want a conference, an AGM, a drinks reception, we can deliver. And for me, it's that service. We want to be a service. We want to make sure their events happen, and that's the bottom line: is making those events happen for the people that want to get engaged with
Yeah.
them. And yeah, it's service and purpose are really big drivers for me, and always have been.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking after your business and changing your business is one thing, and adjusting in this situation. But going back to what we were saying about mindset, of the entrepreneur and that sort of things, how important is self development to you during this journey in terms of being able to kind of look at yourself and make sure you have that kind of skill set to be able to adapt to what's going on?
Yeah, self-development is huge, and for me, it's never been bigger. And I think, again, maybe naively, the first few years of my business, I didn't really work on myself. You kind of think you need these, you need marketing training and you need training on how to use social media or how to write a blog, all the hard training. But actually, the reflection of who am I, what do I stand for, what am I becoming, how do I develop these skills, how do I overcome the skills that the things that I'm not comfortable doing. For example, public speaking. How do I work on that and work through that pain?
You're not comfortable with that at all?
I didn't used to be. I didn't used to
Really?
be. Yeah, in the
You're so
past,
good at it though.
it's the training that I've been having, and it's because I've pushed myself to do this. And in the last year and a half, I've really put public speaking and presentation skills at the top of my priority list, because for far too long, and so many of us do this, and we have those kind of limiting beliefs that we can't possibly stand up and address a room, or we can't hold a Zoom webinar, and those kind of limiting beliefs or the imposter syndrome come in, and we trick ourselves into thinking we can't do these things. And so I identified about a year and a half ago that I have got to stop avoiding public speaking if I want to elevate to the next level. And so I started training and starting to look at what I can do to make myself better at that thing.
Yeah.
And so that's been really important for me. And just in terms of self-development and personal development and growth, in the last year, maybe 2 years ago, if you'd asked me what personal development was, I couldn't even answer that.
Yeah.
And now I've done so much work, so much training, all virtual, reading books, and the amount of books I have here is just crazy, but I know I'm going to get to them at some point and power through them, and just gaining knowledge from whatever medium suits best, whether it's you're listening to it, whether you're reading it, whether you're watching it, is massively important. And I think as they say, you just never stop learning.
No. And I think the thing is as well, whenever you kind of start to look at all that stuff, you start to think of the right questions, and you start to think of, okay, what can I control here, as opposed to thinking, oh my God, this is all overwhelming. And there's, especially when something like COVID happens, there's all these external things that you've got no control over. But it's being able to exist within your cocoon, your own world, and go, okay, but this is what I can do, and I can focus on this. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've found with all the clients who I've been dealing with since the start of COVID. It's like no, you don't focus on that or what you've lost or what you can't do anymore. Think of what you can do, and literally just you're making that mental switch, so you're always in that positive headspace, and you're just like, this is all about possibilities. It's not about obstacles, and that's something I say in this podcast all the time. It's just almost like a mantra,
Yeah.
But so going forward, what would be some advice for people who are looking at doing events? Obviously, top of their list of priorities is getting in contact with you, Ruby, obviously. But going forward, what would you just one or two bits and pieces that you think are useful for them to think about?
I would say that people need to understand why they're running their events and who they're running their events for. Those two things are really important. So to get as much clarity on that as possible as well is to really refine that and get down, dig deep, and don't be afraid to dig deep and challenge, whether it's an advisory board or if it's a management team, around why do we run this conference again? And if there isn't clarity on that,
the purpose behind it,
absolutely, is to get clarity on that, because events are all consuming. They're draining. You put money, energy, effort, time into it, and with the best intentions, a lot of organizations start off planning an event or a conference, one or two people from the office, and suddenly you're having meetings with 10 people or 5 people, and everybody's getting sucked into planning this project, and then suddenly you're dealing with 5 or 10 different opinions. So it's really important to dig deep and challenge the what's been done before, or we've always done it like this, so that there's clarity, crystal clear clarity on why this event should go ahead and who it's for and what their expectations are when they engage with you. So there's that part, and then there's also making an event, whether it's a singular event or a series or it's a calendar, is making it part of the business, business model or the business strategy, is understanding what that event will impact or what will impact that event, whether it's marketing campaigns or the main business objectives or something else, is really having a holistic view of where events fit in, and then what the processes are when people are going to get involved with that event. So, for example, if you look at something like exhibitions, 81% of people that attend exhibitions as exhibitors don't then follow up with people that have come to their stand. And you think that is staggering. That stat is
Why
just...
are they there?
Exactly, it blows your mind, because I've done it, Greg. I've been to events before and said, I really like what your service or your product. Let's catch up, and then I never hear from them again. And I think it's really sad, because for me, I'm not chasing that. I've shown an interest in your business. I want that reciprocated now.
Exactly.
And I want you to be interested in me and what I'd like to do with that product.
I think, I mean, it speaks volumes about, those people, and you're just kind of like, you're really bad at this. I mean, because I mean, they'll have spent thousands, being there as an exhibitor or whatever, and it's just, it beggars belief. But anyway,
it's a lack of process. It's make sure there's a process.
It's like once we've done this, then you make sure you do that and tick that box, and absolutely, all that needs to be in place. Ruby, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great to catch up with you and see how you're getting on, and just quietly, slowly taking over the events world.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me.
Sure, my pleasure, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Speak soon.
Bye.